that, but some of that is themes and truth. And what truth are you saying about the world?
Even what you just said. The story is conflict. That's a secular notion. It's not wrong, but I would replace the word.
Okay, what are you replacing it with?
Instead of the word conflict, replace it with sin.
Stay tuned for the show. Poets at War is sponsored by the following.
Hello, I'm Sarah Levesque, Editor-in-Chief of Logo Sophia magazine. I would like to invite you to explore our Pilgrim's Journal of Life, Love, and Literature, both in visual format and in podcast format. Our goal is to help bridge the gaps between different Christian denominations and traditions. Please visit our website at logosophiamag.com to read or listen to stories, articles, poetry, and more, all for free. We look forward to journeying with you.
It's round 3 for Brendan Sunshine as he joins our general to go over many different thoughts on being an entrepreneur, newly married, and many changes in life. Join us now in the trenches with Brendan Sunshine on Poets at War.
God of song, said the warrior bard, though all the world betray thee, one sword at least thy right shall guard, one faithful heart shall praise thee.
This whole arc we've got going with you. You've been on twice, right? Not just this time.
I've been on
This
twice.
is the third
Yes.
time. Yeah. Okay.
This is the third.
So first time you were not married and you were working at your news station.
At the news station. Yep, that was a year ago almost.
Yeah. And then the second time, where were we? You were about to get married, right?
I was about to get married, I think, and we were it had been like 3 months. I was about to get married, and we wanted to talk about where storytelling is, like in terms of we ended up talking about pacing a whole lot because that was kind of the thing that I got latched onto.
Mm-hmm.
But I was sort of wondering, is there a place for older, slower storytelling in a way, or even like, I didn't say this explicitly because I didn't want to like lead the conversation per se, but I was wondering, like, what you do, is there a place in the modern world for verbal storytelling, for like the more older style of expository stuff? That was what I was wondering when I was, looking at this. And yeah, and now where am I now? I am married. Have been married happily for 10 months, or this will be the 10th. This will be the 10th month once December rolls through, I think. Or maybe it's 11. I can't do math. And now we are expecting a child, my first son. First, I do not know how many there will be, but there will be more than one. We're sure of that. Not including any adoption that may happen, because Kirith really has a heart for that.
Wonderful.
But yeah, and now I am no longer at the news station. I'm working with you. As I guess I'm almost a senior video editor, but I feel like that's a little presumptuous of me to say, as like that's my title. So I've just been saying my title is Journeyman Poobah.
There you go.
Because I'm doing a whole bunch of stuff. Not a ton of different stuff. Mostly it's editing, but yeah, it's been a on one hand, it's been a really crazy year because a whole lot has happened crammed into like one tiny year, not even a full year. But at the same time, there were like there was like a couple months between getting married and the new job that were like, it was a long stretches of what felt like not going anywhere. So it was a weird sensation. In that, like, I'm sitting here looking back and going, holy a whole lot has happened. But the new job, finding out about the baby, and there's another thing, I can't remember what off the top of my head, but like all of that happened in the span of a month. We found out about the baby and the new job in a month. And I was like, oh, okay, God. I mean, we were praying for change, but why don't you just dump it on us all at once? Okay.
And he's like, works. You were praying for change, and I'm giving it to you.
Yes, and I'm not saying I'm ungrateful. Please do not hear that. Thank you. We really needed all of this, but it was like, whoo boy. All right. Well, I have to sort myself out right proper quick.
And we were having a bunch of conversations, especially toward the first interview, that we were having about this sort of thing, about just praying for changing your life, moving up, feeling at the dead end of things, whatever else. And I've just been thoroughly praising God for the stuff that he's brought you through alone.
Yeah.
Not to mention all of us at Yonder Child Media, quite frankly. Benjamin with his new baby girl, and Samuel was a little ways back going through cancer stuff with his girl, and other things of that nature. Yeah, ask him about it sometime. But yeah, it's there's all kinds of crazy stuff going on in everybody's life, and I've just been really glad to be a part of it with you guys, and also the other thing I'll mention is it's nice to have another Presbyterian in the ranks now.
Yes. Proper reformed.
There you go. Proper reformed. That's good. Although I'm really in the weeds now that I'm a part of Presbyterian Church Independent. So.
Oh boy.
I think I told you all about that.
There was some conversation that was happening on the Brood or in Yonder Child. I can't remember which, but somewhere there was a conversation. I remember. Well, I mean, so talking about this, one of the things that was up in the air and is still kind of up in the air is whether or not we're going to go to Germany for missions work. I say it's up in the air. It's still it's 40,000 feet up in the air. Where like there is nothing certain about anything right now. However, I bring this up because we were. Why did I bring this up?
That's okay. We had mentioned it on one of the shows, and so it's good to have an update.
Yeah. We had to wait. The reason. Oh, I remember now. We had to wait to do that. We were told you can't actually pursue this or continue pursuing this. You have to be married at least a year. And we're like, okay, shoot. Well, we also went to our church and said, hey, we were thinking about this. And the pastor said, well, we can't sponsor you unless you go through the leadership training course. Like it's a requirement that they have. And so we're like, oh, okay. And so we've been going through the leadership training course, which is supposed to prepare people or prepare guys for being deacons, but they also are trying to encourage women to go through it as well, so that to help them when they're teaching Sunday school if kids ask a question or whatever.
Sure.
But our church is PCA, and the pastor is former OPC, current PCA. He likes a bunch of stuff, and we're right now going through the Book of Church Order, and it's one of these scenarios where it's like I'm coming up to things that I'm like, I don't, you talk about Presbyterian, right? And you're Presbyterian independent. There are some things in the Westminster Confession and in the Book of Church Order that I don't agree with. Yeah. And one of the things in the Westminster Confession that I don't agree with is paedo communion. They don't do paedo communion. I think that if the sacraments are really effectual means of salvation, you shouldn't be denying the children who are part of the covenant.
Right.
That's my
and I'm generally with you. The one thing that I always put on it too, that I think there are some, not so much CREC, but other more liberal paedo communion places, particularly in the Southeast, that put the emphasis on and put the responsibility on the fathers to specifically determine when they're giving it to the children, and thus it becomes, in my mind, that they are handling the elements in the way an elder would for their children, right? The fencing of the table should be the elders, but it should be a collaborative situation with the father, and they're the ones who have right over the elements.
Yeah, and I'm not going to pretend like I have a solution here, right?
Right.
But I'm only bringing this up with the whole thing because, no matter how I bring this up because it's like, yeah, this is my personal things, but one of the other things that I also have to say, and I don't have to, when I say I have to say it, that sounds like, oh, I don't want to, but I really need to clarify is that no matter what, I'm going to have to submit to the leadership at the church on this whole thing. And so if we go through the class, if like I wasn't chosen to be a deacon or to go through the deacon training this time around, so I doubt that they're going to offer me the position in a way because there's a process, because we're Presbyterian.
The congregation,
there's a process. But if somehow it were to come up, right, and I choose to go through it, I mean, I'm gonna have to submit to the thing anyway, even though I don't agree with it. And it's like,
well, you already submit to it to a certain extent because they're not going to let your little child take communion when it comes out, right? I'm right there.
And if we were to end up, and one of the things that Kirith and I talked about, like when it comes to a church, because she grew up Credo Baptist, not Paedo Baptist, and I'm sitting here like, and that doesn't sit well with me. But no matter what we decided is, no matter what, we would submit to the church that we go to for those things, and I'm willing to do that, even if I have very strong opinions and reservations about that whole thing. But it's really interesting now that I have my own coming up, my own child, and I have to think about all these things, and I have to think about a whole bunch of stuff moving forward. It's like, okay, hello. It boggles my mind that like our boss Adrian is 2 years older than me and has 6 kids.
Yeah, I know.
And I'm like, I mean, you've been busy, good grief. But
I've wanted to be that guy, and I did for a long time. I'm such a weird dude, as you know, that it took a very specific and unique person to be my wife, and so it took a while to find her.
Yeah, well, God bless her.
Yeah.
And God bless my wife. But yeah, I'm kind of the same way. I think I'm a little more tame than you on the unique side, unfortunately. To my detriment, I am more tame than you. But yeah, it's just it's so weird how much change has happened. And yeah, praise God. Yes, I'm so happy. But now it's almost a deer in the headlights when you see what's coming down the line. And I am having to force myself to make some very serious changes to my habits in order to get this thing going, because I had built up a bunch of habits of consumption and not a lot of habits of production, which is something that I made noises about in our first episode a year ago, and I haven't made a whole ton of progress beyond more brainstorming and sifting, and like I've created, but I haven't created like a tangible thing to share with people.
You haven't published.
I haven't published. Yeah, I've created. I haven't published, and the creations are unfinished still. So, yeah. I mean, it's its own thing. But again, it's also been a little bit of a busy year. Like I wanted to like I would have loved to like jump on the bandwagon like right on the first of the year. All right, new year, new me, let's go. And then February 5th rolls around and I get married.
Yep.
And the days leading up to February 5th before that rolled around and I was busy.
Yeah.
And then I go on a honeymoon with mini honeymoon with my wife for a week. And then I'm back to work, and but now I have to move someone into my house.
Right.
And now we have to like in a year, I've moved into a house, moved someone else into my house, which by the way is a tiny apartment. It's not even a house.
Right.
learn to live with a person, which is a full-time job in and of itself. Learn their habits, learn their quirks.
Learn to work from home.
Well, that's happening within the past week. We're not even there
Right.
yet. We haven't even gotten to the new job.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, oh, hey, what do you know? Danger, Will Robinson.
I got a story that I could tell about when we got married. I've told the story of us getting married, but one thing I failed to mention in my first telling was when I was marrying time for me and Casey. I was working non-emergency medical transport, and basically my boss, the way he ran things was an hourly rate. But it was a situation where he would try to get in as many rides as possible during that entire time. Right. And so that allowed us to have something stable if rides were slow, but was allowed him to crunch. Well, because I was the one who would get things done quickly because I had other fish to fry, I was always the one who ended up staying late, and I had to really watch that. Well, actually, the night that Casey and I were getting married, which was halfway between an elopement and a marriage, we planned it like a week ahead of time, just parents and stuff, whatever.
Yeah.
It was our pastor in a church, but still. He's trying to get me to go do other stuff, and I'm like, can I call someone else to take over the route for me, because I kind of gotta go get married. And he was like, wait, what? I'm like, no, really, this is happening. I'm not making this up. He's like, okay, yeah, call him, get him on the route, it's fine.
At least he was understanding. Be a little.
This is one of the only times he was understanding, to be honest with you. But yeah, it was like, I have to go get married. I just thought that was so funny.
It is. Yeah, that. I can't imagine what it'd be like to be him just going, wait, what? Wait, what? Wait, what?
Because it was pretty much impossible to ask for days off with him. He was just that kind of a boss. So it was like, he kind of almost asked, why didn't you ask for the day off? I'm like, well, I didn't need the whole day.
I didn't need the whole day.
I needed money. So,
gosh, yeah.
Oh man. But yeah, the life of freelance minded people, whether we're freelance or not, am I right?
Yeah, well, that was another thing. Yesterday, we okay, so to put this in perspective, our apartment is like, if it weren't for the fact that there are walls between the living room and the bedroom, our apartment would be a studio.
Yeah. I've been there.
That's small.
That was our first apartment. Yep.
And so that's fine. That's okay. And we're probably going to stick with it. But the landlord said, hey, because to put our landlord's perspective, they're awesome. They buy houses, fix them up, and then put them up for rent and stuff.
Yeah.
It's kind of their
flippers. Yeah.
Yeah. They're flippers. And they're very understanding, very accommodating. Well, one of their other tenants is leaving their apartment, and so now there is a 2-bedroom with a living room and kitchen and dining room opening up, but it doesn't have it like our current setup. The only thing we need to pay for is the only bill we need to pay for is electricity. All the other utilities are covered. That one has nothing covered. So it's increased rent and bills. Right. And we have a couple things going on. And so it's like, all right, one more space. On the other hand, money. Like, can we actually physically afford this? Right. That is the question. And the general conclusion I came to is it would be really, really hard, but hypothetically it's possible.
Mhm.
But I would want to, like you said, that freelance mindedness. I would want to do what I'm trying to work on now and like flip my like habits around,
Right.
flip habits to be actually production and consumption and stuff like that.
Mhm.
Or not consumption, not consuming, but actually producing, creating, publishing, stuff like that. And I sort of, one of the things I've been meaning to ask the Brood as a whole, but haven't yet, is I'm wondering if there is a market for using like Patreon.
Mhm.
Because you know how people use Patreon for like early access to
Right.
web comics or whatever.
Right. Yeah.
Is there a market for Patreon for early access to like book chapters?
I'm sure there is, depending on your books and stuff. But the big thing is establishing an audience in the first place.
Yeah, which
Yeah.
this is again hypothetical, but
Right.
yeah,
Right.
establishing the audience is the big number one.
Oh yeah. Always.
Step one.
I'm still establishing audience. But yeah, it's the thing that you might want to look into. Nate Wilson does some of his books through this service. I'm trying to remember the name, but it's escaping me. But there is it's not Substack. Wait, maybe it's Substack. But anyway, essentially it is a you pay a month, or either a monthly or a per thing for text. Essentially, it is written articles, Word, etc. And there are, basically allows for anyone who's a writer to go freelance, direct to audience. I believe it's Substack, if I remember correctly. Might want to go look that route. The other route for media in general that I have found, and I have not found that there's a whole lot of people who use the service very much and they're not super familiar with it, but just from a functionality standpoint, Gumroad.com.
Hey, Gumroad.
ROAD. You know about Gumroad?
I know
of
it.
About Gumroad. Yeah, Gumroad is good for if you've got random weird files, groups of files and things that you want to share with people and get paid for. So
random collections.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah.
You got random collections.
I have so many like random tidbits here and there. I get these ideas. And the ideas sometimes is good. Sometimes it's high concept. Sometimes it's a really good high concept. Sometimes it's just something I want. But the execution always is what ends up gutting me, which is a little weird because
no, it's not. It's pretty common.
I mean, yeah, it's common, but so there is a book that I read recently called The E-Myth. I can't remember who the author is.
Okay.
But it's talking about the myth of entrepreneur. And what he says is that every person who is an entrepreneur or every business has a there's sort of three competing people. There is the actual entrepreneur who's the innovator. There's the manager.
Michael Gerber.
Yes, Gerber. Michael Gerber. There's the innovator, the manager, and the technician. The technician is the one who actually does the thing. So if somebody were, say, a video person,
Benjamin,
they're currently working at a company that they don't want to meet with news. But I'm a technician for video. Right. I do that sort of thing. There will be the innovator will have a spark of insanity that says, I can do this thing. And they will start making and they will quit their job and go off and start the thing. And it might work for a bit because they're a technician. But then reality hits and the manager, and they have to start managing. And they might not like managing, or they might be a decent manager, but they're not great technician or whatever. Right? They see a need and they're willing to fill it, but they are awful at actually fulfilling that need.
Right.
When it comes to video, I've spent a lot of time studying. I'm great technically when it comes to video. I've got a reasonable reasonable. I've got a good eye. I need to learn to actually know I am a professional here. I do have a good eye at this sort of thing. I'm good at noticing details. I can tell when something's off. I was really good at matching audio to video when like the lip sync is off. I have a really good eye for that. I would do that even back at the station because the video we got wasn't always best. But then like when it comes to these other things, these other stories that I want to tell, like comics, I am not technically good at comics.
Right.
I am not like, I can kind of draw, but not to the standard that I want it to be. It's not to the standard that I would like. And so I try doing these things and I get frustrated, and then the person, the innovator, the one who came up with this idea, who had this high concept, he either gets bored because the concept's not going anywhere, or the ADHD goes, ooh, shiny, and dives after something new. And so suddenly I get sucked into that. And so like that's been like my recurring issue. And again, like I don't want to sound like I'm trying to come up with excuses, because that's not what I'm trying to do. I know very full well that if I wanted to really get into this, I could hardcore study, hardcore do this thing, even with working, doing the full-time job at home. I could easily get good at this if I pour everything I've got into it. It's really hard to pour everything you got into something when you don't feel like you're making any progress.
Dude, you are such like this is one of the reasons I like having you on, because you are such the everyman. Everything you're saying is almost exactly what everyone else in the Brood is talking about in one way, shape, form, or another. Me, to a certain extent, I've gotten past a few things. A lot of the ADHD stuff I've figured out, but I wanted to ask, have you read, this is one of those books, if I could get it for everyone in the Brood this year for Christmas, I would. I think I might be able to get it for one, but we'll see. But the book is Plot Activity by Doug Wilson. Have you read it?
Plot Activity?
Plot Activity.
I have not read that one.
Okay.
I've read one Doug Wilson book.
Okay.
It was The Federal Husband.
Oh, there you go. He really got you then, right? He kind of doesn't pull punches in that one.
No, he doesn't.
I only know that from cliff notes from people like Chalk Knox and stuff like that, but I've heard of the book. But the Plot Activity is a really good book that kind of does two things, and this is the thing about books and helpful books. There's so much junk out there. Don't spend your money on it. But if you are going to spend your money on it, I can tell you what, that's one book that I would get everyone in the Brood.
Right.
And the reason is because the focus is Christ. I mean, it's Doug Wilson.
Yep.
That's just how he talks. Like him or not, that's the focus is Christ.
I like him.
Oh, I know you do.
Listening in.
But he, his two things that he really kind of nails down on are people's suspicion of technology, particularly in Christian communities, and how to rightly think about it within Scripture. And then two, what's a way to actually be productive in society and building the kingdom, that kind of a thing. So he kind of goes hand in hand, and he does a really, really good job with it.
Yeah.
The thing that it has kind of led me to, and I thought that this might help you, not directly, but you can take piecemeal from what I do.
Sure.
I've got 16 regular, you know about my poetry bricks, right?
Yeah. I've seen them. You got some good stuff.
I appreciate that. I have 16 different series that I'm running simultaneously.
Mm-hmm.
And
dice.
Yeah, you heard about that. I
heard about that. You roll dice. As a D&D nerd, it makes me happy.
There you go. But yeah, no, like I got it right here. I got the dice. But yeah, so I have a silver dollar in there too for a two-sided.
Sure.
But anyway, the and usually because it's in a jar, I just roll out the whole thing, and depending, like if I have something that has 16, for example, I'm looking at the D20, and if there's 4 above 16, then any of those 4 above would be my choice or re-roll.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so it's just a nice way to do it. It's a nice tactile, fun thing. I'm like, ooh, get to roll the dice. I get a new fun shiny thing each time I do it. You know?
Woohoo!
And
Yeah.
so it really feeds that, you know, dopamine hit and everything, and keeps me going. And I don't have to think about it until, because I got so much backed up stuff, and I know you do too, backed up art and stories and that sort of a thing, where it's just been written or drawn or whatever.
It's yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Little pieces
Yeah.
here and there. Right.
Mm-hmm.
The point is, I don't have to worry about it until I need to worry about it. Right.
And then the dice determine when you need to worry about it.
Exactly. And I
So.
could worry about that one thing instead of all the things.
Yeah. That is a great method that you've got for yourself. I'm
not saying
here,
it worked for
yeah.
you, but
yeah. Yeah. Well, let me throw one example at you that I've already mentioned once. It was back in the first one. I mentioned that I had this like I said I wanted to be a Ghibli, not a Ghibli, a Miyazaki from Studio Ghibli, and then in the second one, I referenced Studio Ghibli again because of the Quiet video, which was one of my better ones. But of course it is, because I'm always growing. But like the story that I was thinking of when I made that comment, like I had this idea of, and I mentioned that as like try to narrow down. So let's start off with limit the number of characters, only 2 characters. So I would only, because I was thinking this would be a comic, I would only have to draw 2 characters consistently throughout the whole thing, rather than like 5 or whatever.
right.
You know, it's like, okay, because I had another story where there were 5 main characters and I would have to draw 5 main characters consistently and get good at that. Now, do I think that the 5-man band is a stereotype for a reason? Yes.
Yeah.
It creates very effective. But when you're trying to get better and get good at something, you just narrowing your focus sometimes can help. But the other thing is, like with that story, I wanted to focus on beauty, because beauty was something that I was very, I still am, but at that point, that was when I was really like latching onto that idea. And it's like, I want to make this as beautiful as possible. I want to create beautiful pictures, because comics can be nice looking, but you don't necessarily think beautiful when you look at the majority of the panels. It's when they do the splash page where it covers 2 pages of one giant picture. That's when you go, wow, right?
Right.
I wanted to include the like part of this comic idea included that wow element, maybe not frequently because you don't want to overdo it, but having those splash pages be some core element of the story to a certain degree, or a core element to conveying the proper emotion, so that if I wanted to set it up so that every I might like have made a rule where every chapter, because I'm running off of manga and manga has chapters, every chapter has one splash, or maybe every book has one splash, and where the splash is important to the story and have people look forward to it. That was going to be the entire sort of goal. And the story itself was about one of the characters actually has to stop and learn not to be so focused on what they're doing, but like he needs to learn to stop, and I hate to say stop and smell the roses, but that character is a warrior, and so he's so used to like punishing evil, like stop evil, fight. He has to learn to also nurture good and nurture beauty. And so part of the beauty element was for him, from a story perspective, to sort of show him noticing it more and more and more and draw that out. So, you know, and I'm not saying you don't have that with your stories, but I'm wondering, you know, I've got this like meta concept, I guess, going on up here.
Yeah.
And for that story,
I do too.
You do. Okay. That was the way, you know, so
here's the deal. Not all my, I spent a long time writing these stories, and they're not done, but they're most of them 3/4 or so done.
Mhm.
I have one season of one show completely done. But basically, I just started writing these, and they're poetry and everything, and I have my format for them. But the main thing that I did during all that time, and I still do on a regular basis, is world building to where I'm steeping myself in the world. I actually have a whole other dice rolling item beyond just making the poetry bricks that is for story work, and it includes, in fact, I just fully finalized this recently because I realized I like writing, but I get so I'm very easily distracted by other people when I'm writing. I have a very hard time focusing on writing when other people are around, and I am better at it when I can either carve out the time or plan for the time to write. So there's certain times during the week we've set up to where Casey's going to go out with the kids and I'm here by myself, and I try to use those times for recording and writing if I need to. The story work thing that I have every day, I roll it 20-sided for the series, and then I roll my 8-side for one of these 8 tasks. Write a rhyming couplet, meaning just one couplet, nothing crazy, right? Character art, so I can either make some character art or I can color some. I have barter work with Ian Wilson. He's regularly making me new art to where I can just go and color it and everything, because I enjoy the coloring process. It puts less stress on him. He's not as into the coloring, that sort of a thing. Add a song to a series playlist on YouTube. This is like for inspiration, right?
Yeah.
Add a song to a character playlist on YouTube. Have a random one song dream session based off of the series playlist, like shuffle it, right? And just take the time to really focus and listen to the song, whatever comes up. Same with a character. Next one. 7 is a character personality test. This is something I've said to a lot of people, especially people who come at Myers-Briggs or Enneagram or whatever else. I'm like, yeah, it's not something you base your life of. That's just stupid. But it's really helpful for character writing.
It's useful. It's a tool.
Very, very useful. Yeah, exactly. And it's especially useful for fictional characters, understanding tendencies, that sort of a thing. And I find doing a personality test as your character, especially Myers-Briggs or Enneagram, helps really well. There's a Sleeping at Last. I don't know if you're familiar with his work. He does music. He did a whole album. He's like a Christian artist, sort of sounds Coldplay-ish. Anyway, I'm not huge on Coldplay, but I like him. He did a whole album based off the Enneagram that is like these really, truly emotional songs based on each character type or each personality type. And so when I do the Enneagram with a character, I'll actually sit and listen to that song and hear the character singing it. And go through that whole experience as the character, and each and every different character, I hear those words, and it's just like, it breaks my heart to hear their longings and their desires, And then the last thing, if I roll an 8, is a character poem rhyming couplet. I'm planning on adding these eventually to, whether I do it through Gumroad or something else, essentially do like a whole episode, which is usually 8 to 12 poems as a landscape video with the words on screen so that people can like watch it on their TV as a family. It has the poetry brick off to the side, and I put all the poetry bricks together, but you get the full landscape experience. And then I want to add deleted scenes and commentary as extra, right? And when I say deleted scenes, I'm adding extra stuff, because I don't waste anything. But character poems would be like a poem about a character, it's sort of in that Chaucer sort of way, right?
Sure.
So I do have, and when I say writing, I consider, if I'm supposed to write one poem or one couplet or one whatever, a couplet can also be a story beat. If the next thing I need is the outline, I need to write a rhyming couplet, I substitute story beat.
Sure.
You see what I'm saying?
Sure, yeah.
Exactly. And so when it comes to meta, I'm still very meta. I'm still very world buildy. I'm still trying to experience this from 10,000 feet up on the regular. So when it comes time to do these little quick dots on the canvas,
Yeah.
I'm ready.
Yeah, you've got it.
Yep. That's actually a really good question. But go ahead.
You've covered everything. But the only thing I would say is that, like, when I was talking meta, I'm not just talking world building. I'm also talking the purpose of the story and the purpose of the thing, because I was so grateful that I wasn't called crazy when I did my whole soapbox with scientism as a whole is why the church in the global north is anemic to a certain degree.
Do a quick recap for people who weren't in the
people who are not in the people who are not on the conversation. I have a theory that I've thought a lot about, but requires a bit more research and development, that scientific materialism, and by that I mean the emphasis on focusing on the natural world and the material and what is purely physical, has caused the church as a whole to forget the spiritual realm and spiritual entities. And by doing so, and by not pursuing avenues of such things, the church has become as a whole ineffective at dealing with problems, even physical ones. And it is why many of the people in the global north are leaving the church for Wicca, Odin, Norse mythology, other things like that, because they are seeing truth in those stories that the church refuses to acknowledge, and they end up chasing after the wrong thing.
Right.
This has been no, go on.
I was just gonna say, yeah, you didn't feel stupid when people agreed with you in the Brood.
No, I didn't. I don't think it's. I do not think it's stupid. The issue is that people and I think, I hate to say this, I think Reformed are definitely the most prone to this kind of critique that I'm about to say. They're very much we're not supposed to know about it because it's not in Scripture. And we're not supposed to like we shouldn't handle this. Like Simon the Sorcerer is an example that they turn to a lot. Necromancy is forbidden. All these things are forbidden. And what I'm saying is, no, yes, you're right, but I'm not saying we should be doing that thing per se. I'm saying we need to acknowledge its existence and notice patterns where they exist, right? And be willing to look at folklore and other things to maybe tease out assumptions about the world, with the understanding that these are just assumptions. They aren't actual things we should be making decisions about. We still need to be focusing on the Word of God. We still need to be focusing on the commandments. I'm not saying just because that water in Africa has memory and the Norse have Sleipnir or whatever, and the Greeks have naiads, that we need to start worshiping water. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that it may do to pay attention that, hold on, maybe the natural world has spirits in it that are designed to govern it, and or
at least cause them to function.
And therefore, and then we can look at Scripture and see when Jesus says to the waves, he speaks to them and says to be still. Now, we know words have power because God's spoken to existence. This is why lying is such a actually dangerous sin. And so if God spoke the world to existence, it makes sense that Jesus, his son, could speak and control it to a certain degree. However, he doesn't say, well, he does say be still, but he also says peace. Now, is there a language thing that I'm missing here? You know, the Hebrews say shalom. They say peace as greeting. Well, that's an interesting thing. Maybe he was greeting it. That could be one method. Or maybe he was telling it, peace, be calm. You know, maybe he was doing a variation of that. We don't know because we're not. And I'm not saying we should draw conclusions on that, but it might do to note, oh, look, this is something that doesn't confirm, but it also doesn't deny this idea that nature spirits can govern, control, whatever. And if spiritual world can affect the physical world, we know that's true, demonic possession. Well, can the physical world affect the spiritual world? Well, that's the whole point of fasting. It's the whole point of this. I'm getting on my soapbox again, but basically, but this what my idea was that the church, because of this, hey, and the Brood was very encouraging. They were like, actually, no, this you do make sense. You are you know this is a really interesting idea. It's good.
You're at least in the right ballpark.
Yeah, we're in an interesting ballpark, and it's not something that I see a lot of people talking about. So some of my stories, like, they have different like ideas. Like, for me, some of it was like that I'm calling it the Feywild story. That one where the guy has to discover beauty. That's his character arc. The other character has their own character arc, and the overall message and the overall assumption that I'm baking into that story is that there are spiritual entities and they operate and function and act in their own unique ways to their ends. Some are good, some are bad, and some aren't malevolent, but they're not good either. And that is its own thing.
See, this is all baked into my dreaming stuff that I do, like with the songs and things. And when I create a character, I'm very character driven in the way I do things. And to me, understanding what a story is understanding what the characters are. You see what I'm saying? And so that might be different, but it might not be different from what you're already doing. And so to me, I can't think about my purpose in the story unless I know what the characters' purposes are. And I know what the characters' purposes are because I know who they are on a very deep, intimate level, like my creator knows me. And so the more I can know them, and that's not just the protagonists.
Yes,
that's the antagonists, and that's every little minion, you know, every nook and cranny of this world. I know who they are, and I know what they're for. I am always constantly asking, who are they and what are they for? And if you know who they are and what they're for, you'll know what that object is for, or that location is for, or this, that, or the other, because they belong to people. Every single thing under character belongs to characters. You see what I'm saying? And so, that's the way I think of it anyway.
And I will say that is, you're not the only one who thinks that way. So a couple of anecdotes. One, Jim Butcher, who is an author of the Dresden Files and a bunch of other things, prolific author, really good, really fun, very popcorn blockbuster books, basically. I like to call them blockbuster books. They're like blockbuster action movies, but books. He says, don't preach harder than you can write a story.
That's right.
And so I feel like I have a tendency to err on the preaching rather than the story writing, because I will admit that character arcs, character stories, that is definitely something that I am weak on. When I get it.
Yeah. I was just going to say really briefly, and that's a really hard line to walk nowadays, because we live in a world that has become so materialistic to the point where nonfiction is valuable and fiction is not. And so that's why I do Poets at War. That's why I do all these other sorts of things, because if I could just write poetry bricks and build a following only on that, I would. But I don't, because these are the things that we need to talk about. We need to talk about characters and writing and the process and all this stuff. And we also really, really need to talk about themes. We need to talk about, you know, all these different sorts of things. things on a meta level because it's so outside of what should be completely and totally second sense kind of, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like common sense kind of stuff. Intuitive. That's the word I'm looking for. Go ahead.
Yeah, and like I know, like when I get characters right, it is some of the most fun I can have.
Mm-hmm. Oh
but
yeah.
It is so hard for me to get characters right. Now, and the other thing is a lot of the great stories are very character driven because what is a story? But it needs, you know, like you can think of however many different stories. They're all based on conflict. In order to have conflict, you need to have a character who wants something and another character who has an opposing want and or need. We can even get into that, but we're not going to because that would take too long. And for the whole, like, fiction is not worth it. And themes and things. I hate to say this, but I really, really like Arcane. The League of Legends mini series animated that came out.
I know nothing about it. Sounds fine.
It's there are some less than Christian
okay. Gotcha.
undertones to
you
them.
like it.
There's some less than Christian undertones to them, but the characters and the story are really, really freaking compelling. What do you know? Because it is very character driven. There's another YouTuber I watch where her whole thing, she used to make video games. She still does, but she's an indie developer, and so it takes her a long time. She says that she cannot write a story unless she has characters. That's her thing. And I know that, like, yeah, no, I need to have really – I really want to write character-driven stories, but I'm stuck because I also am like – but we, you know, the Christianity has, like, you were saying that at the FLF conference, Toby Sumter did that amazing thing with baptizing Christian imagination.
Yeah.
You know, and some of that, like, it's not all that, but some of that is themes and truth. And what truth are you saying about the world?
Well, even what you just said, the story is conflict. That's a secular notion. It's not wrong, but I would replace the word.
Okay, what are you replacing it with?
Instead of the word conflict, replace it with sin.
Okay, yeah, sure.
You see what I'm saying? Every story is about sin and how it gets either repented of or drags someone to hell. Every story. What is the sin? What is the instead of saying what is the conflict, say what is the sin?
Sure.
You know, and that makes it that much more real to your Christian life and the way that you try to live, right? It makes it that much more imperative to you that this person be redeemed or damned. You know, like that's the way it is. What is the sin? And sin gets tangly and webby, and we know so much about it, and we can rely on the word in our storytelling instead of a lot of these secular professorial notions, which I'm not saying we should totally throw those out, but I am saying that, like, we need to start playing repair and replace on some of these ideas that we've been handed down through the Joseph Campbells of the world, you know?
Yeah. That is very interesting. Yeah, like repair and replace is a very good. You should title your episode that. No, that is a very that is a very good, like, call to action. It's a very good, like, punctuation point. I think that what I'm going to, like, okay, so a couple of things. Like, I do play D&D, and I play, like, with a group on Saturday. They're sort of secular. I might start recording those and start trying to, like, tell that story just as practice. For fun. But that game, I was trying really hard to write a character, and so I worked on the backstory and all this stuff, and I came up with a really interesting thing, and I used, you know, music to inspire me for what I thought about the character and stuff. I'm thinking I'm going to need to do more of that, and I don't want to completely table, like I don't want to completely like remove visual elements from anything I do.
No, totally, yeah.
But I want to make stuff. And so I might just start with just writing, just write stuff out, just write things out, maybe punch the desk. And then once I'm done abusing myself, then maybe trying to script it, maybe try to do, maybe find somebody who does art that I like and try to cooperate with them. If I know them in person, maybe I can like,
well, you know, we got a couple in the brood.
Feed them. Hey, I'm willing to give you food if you are willing to draw for me.
There you go. I tell you what.
Something. I don't know. But like just have something interesting and focus on that character element and then start looking at what like the Dark Mirror. The concept of a villain who is the same as the hero, but they make a different choice. Right. How do we take that? How do we take, like, I mean, there's a very easy way to take that and just go, oh, well, the hero is the one who does the thing that Jesus would do, and the villain is the one that does the thing the world would do. Okay, yes, fine. That sounds like, yeah, whatever.
You don't have to make it that simple or Sunday school, but you know.
But that's the thing. Like, oh man, okay, and this is the other thing that, you know, with the whole repair and replace, we're trying to, you know, piece this together. We still want to make good, true stories. Tolkien did that, you know, and Lewis did that, and they weren't thinking about all of this heady stuff. I don't think.
I think Tolkien had some of that. But he was more interested in like the little things that tickled his fancy. Yeah. Than it was the other things. And I think that's something that we should get back to as well, is what are the things that tickle our fancy?
What are the things that you like? Do what you like.
I mean, my first my very first the earliest story that I'm still currently writing and doing on Poetry Bricks is the Superhero Alliance Patrol Ensemble. I don't know if you've seen any of those, but it's a comedy superhero series. And I largely created it because of, did you watch Dexter's Laboratory?
No, but I know of it.
Okay,
I know enough of it.
So they would do 8-minute, 7-minute segments, and it would be 2 Dexter cartoons on either end and then something else in the middle, and they rotated what was in the middle. The middle one of the middle series that they did was the Justice Friends, and it was a parody of, you know, Super Friends kind of a thing, and it was really, really funny. And they only had, it was a 3-man band kind of thing. You had Major Glory, you had Val Hallen, like Van Halen, but he was Thor basically, and the Infraggable Crunk. And
wait, is Crunk the one that was like all about Puppet Pal Clem?
Yep.
Puppet Pal Clem.
Okay, so you do remember them. Okay.
Oh my gosh. No, I actually don't remember. I just know about Puppet Pal Clem.
Puppet Pal Clem. That's weird. That's a weird thing to have knowledge
day. Listen, I've used Bonk Day many a time.
That seems like your personality. So but yeah, no, like that inspired me as like a 15-year-old and made me want to do my own. And I have 6 in my group, but they are, I thought of the idea. That was the other thing that inspired me, was Inspector Gadget. I wanted to do an uncle niece orphaned girl kind of relationship, and it's Captain Majestic and Robo Girl. And they have an interesting relationship, and she's all patched up because her parents were in a car wreck with her when she was coming home. You know, there's a lot of, but it's like all these superhero tropes kind of thrown into a pot and stirred with my own sense of humor. Right. And it's just like, that makes me so happy. The fact that I was able to do a really subtle drug joke in my story, Noah Bats and I, makes me really happy. There's this, I have to say this one thing. If y'all haven't checked it out, you can go check it out now. It's number 4, SHA Patrol Ensemble 4, hashtag all that. The dragon and they're trying to build this team. Her and her uncle, right? Captain Majestic and Robo Girl, and they're having a hard time finding people that want to join up, and they can't afford to release anyone from the academy because you essentially pay their tuition to release them early. And so the dragon is this old school janitor karate man. He's used to be this amazing, Mr. Miyagi fighter dude, and he was dishonored, and he doesn't want to talk about it. But what ended up happening was Captain Majestic went back up into his office to clean some stuff out, found the janitor, offered him a job. He's like, no more cleaning floors. I am so in, etc. And the joke was, he said, let's talk about this over some herbal tea. And he's like, I don't mind the tea part, Fu, but I'm completely drug free.
Oh, wow.
I know, just little things like I had to share that one with you.
You have to throw that in.
It's so fun. It's so stupid and fun. And that's the thing. None of this has to be high concept beauty. I'm not saying it shouldn't. We need our high concept beauty stories, but we also need our goofy little drug references that are going to sail straight over the kids' heads. We need our Looney Tunes.
Yeah, yeah, we do. We need Looney Tunes. We need we need Veggie Tales.
Yeah.
Where like, and by being like old school Veggie Tales.
I know what you mean.
Where we laugh at it as kids and the adults laugh at it because there's a joke in there that no kid would get.
Yep, exactly. I mean, there's so much good work to do in stories. There is so much good work to do, and we just need to do it. And when we say that, we don't mean that you need to slave. You need to keep going, Brendan and whoever else is listening. You need to keep sitting your butt in the chair and writing. I get so tired of hearing that. You need to have fun doing what you're doing, because if you don't, your readers are not going to care.
Yep.
They're not.
Yeah. No. And that's, yeah, I managed to complete. It's not finished. I say it's I finished it. It's not necessarily completed, but I got an entire screenplay written from start to finish.
Wonderful.
And it took me 3 years to do.
Mm-hmm.
And I say it's not finished, or I wanted to say it was completed but not finished, because it requires a lot of editing. It requires going back, and I'm looking back at some of the things. I'm like, I could make this so much better. Why did I have that? But it was done, and it got started because of 2 scenes that weren't even at the beginning, that were in my head, that I absolutely loved, and I'm getting emotional. I absolutely loved them, and they it was the emotive center of what I thought would be a beautiful place that I would want to live and want to spend time. And that moment, I wrote it out because I wanted that thing there. And then when I took the class, I was like, I could make this. I could do something with this, because that story happened. You have a beautiful idyllic place, and then main character shows up, and then everything goes to pits. Because
and see, this is the thing that is going to be remembered whenever that becomes a big thing, because in the hole in the ground there lived a hobbit. I just saw in my mind a fawn in a forest with a lamppost carrying a bunch of parcels. And I just lost my lucky rabbit, and I'm on a train somewhere, and I'm gonna doodle a mouse. You know that story,
yeah.
I'm like this is how this works, people. We act like we have some, and these are not. This is not me saying, oh, look at these magical moments, because those get romanticized and mysticized out the wazoo. This is the exact same thing in a real and tangible way. This is the exact same thing as me saying I want to do a superhero comedy because superheroes are ridiculous.
If you think about it, they really are.
They really are. And let's poke fun at that. And so like there's nothing actually intrinsically different except for the fact, like Sam says, Lord of the Rings, they kept going. That's it. And it doesn't have to be a slog to Mordor. You can hit skippity hop through Tom Bombadil's land. It's fine. Just pick where you're going and go. Don't stop.
Yeah. I will also say one of the lore founders posts was really interesting to sort of this is an entirely different topic for an entirely different day, but just to mention we're talking about being happy and doing what we love and stuff. One of the things that they mentions is that he thinks that this guy said that he thinks that there's a real place for Christian horror. Like the existential dread, not necessarily like the gory slasher films or whatever, but like existential horror, ghost story, dread, that kind of looming thing. He says he thinks that there's a real place for that. So now, obviously, people who read that, they enjoy reading that, and people who write that, they enjoy writing that. So there's a certain amount of that. You're still doing what you like. Right, in that function, but we don't have to, like, your story doesn't have to be hopeful, your story doesn't have to have a happy ending. If you're and I think this is something that I said earlier, like way back in the beginning, and I'm going to say it again. If you're mad, write out your anger. If something is frustrating you and there's a catharsis that you get out of writing out this scene,
but don't necessarily expect that to be your thing. Like it could be.
It could be. Or it could. Maybe it is. Maybe it's not. That's not.
Yeah. Exactly. And so don't just throw your emotion into it, but really let the emotions turn into thoughts and ruminations and things like what I just talked about with sin equals conflict. Conflict equals sin, right? Like what they talk about as conflict is sin, which is one of the reasons why I did a whole episode on this a while back. But the idea that I looked at like legitimately like the top 15 or so favorite films, my favorite films of all time. Every single one of them had an element that could be described as original sin, meaning that there was something that happened before the story that has caused a spiraling out of control throughout the entirety of this movie. Right? There is something beyond the scope of the film that is affecting these people, and they are slaves to in one way, shape, or form or another. Every single one of my 15 had this element. Like it was insane. And it's no coincidence that that's the kind of story that resonates with me, especially being, and when you really start to think about it, I was a covenant child brought up in a Presbyterian household. The evil in the world is so far beyond my scope of time, so far beyond the scope of my time, that it's just this looming thing. And the only thing that's going to win the day is love shining through in the end to break the chain. Right. And that's every single one of my favorite films and series, even, that's Avengers, that's Star Wars, that's, my favorite, Secret of Kells, Beauty and the Beast. It's all these sorts, even The Greatest Showman. You know what I mean? Like there's all these things that affect the characters, and they're trying to break the cycle. So find that thing that's common to all the stories that you love, and do that because you love it for a reason, because you know it, and you know it on an instinctual level, and you need to dig down deeper. Like this was the thing that Phil Lawler gave me last time. Dig deeper, particularly into the Word of God, but just dig deeper where the treasure is. Dig deeper and keep digging. There's no Balrogs down there in the Bible. So, I mean, there might be, but you know what I mean. So,
Yeah, that's a good call to action. Dig, just keep digging. And yeah, I didn't mean to say like only let your emotions rule, but my point was like, oh, don't
That's
feel
a
like
good
you
starting
have to be chained. Don't feel like you have to be chained to happiness. You know,
correct.
Yes,
Correct.
yes, Jesus is our hope. Yes, we have won the victory.
I'll
Life
go
still
ahead-
sucks.
Yeah. I'll go ahead and wrap there, and then I got a couple more things for you, then we can roll, if I'm not holding you back. But everybody, be your family's bard. Do not turn to the right or to the left, and the Lord will be with you wherever you go. We'll see you next time in the trenches on Poets at War.
God of song, said the warrior bard, though all the world betray thee, one sword at least thy right shall guard, one faithful heart shall praise thee.
If these words awoke within you a stirring and radiant fire, please remember even a bard is worthy of his wages and hire. Go to joshuadavidling.com/support to support me and my family.